I'm disabled and called my husband a liability. After he left the front door open, ruined my car, and spends all day streaming, while I handle our daughter and everything else. I'm a 34-year-old woman, and I've been with my husband, Nathan, who's 37, for about 8 years now. We have a 3-year-old daughter. Ever since she was born, I've found it hard to trust Nathan with even the smallest things. Here's some background. When I was 19, I was in a car accident caused by a semi-truck driver who fell asleep at the wheel. My car was wrecked, and I ended up with a lot of metal holding me together, so much so that TSA checkpoints are a nightmare. My health is up and down, with good days and bad days. I used part of my accident settlement to buy and modify a house to fit my needs, as I might need a wheelchair in the future. I work in software development, which is great because it's fun and I can work from bed on my bad days. Nathan hasn't worked in 5 years, which was fine until our daughter was born. We were financially stable thanks to the settlement, a paid-off house, and my income. He used to help around the house a lot, and we even hired a cleaner to give us more time together. But after our daughter was born, it felt like Nathan just stopped trying. He would buy the wrong size diapers, mix formula wrong, put diapers on backwards, leave poop-covered wipes out, forget to latch cabinets, and more. This past week alone, he went to the store 3 times, and still came back with the wrong size socks and shoes for her. I eventually just ordered the right ones on Amazon to save us both the headache. When it comes to helping me, he hasn't been much better. He tried to organize my weekly meds several times, but ended up spilling them everywhere and missing pills on the floor. He's brought me grapefruit juice to take my meds with, even though I've told him a million times I can't have it. He keeps forgetting I can't have dairy and puts milk in my coffee or cheese on my burger. He broke my laptop because it slipped from his hand, even after I told him I'd pack my own electronics for our trip. We've lost so many utensils to the garbage disposal, and he once tried to fix my car's head gasket, but ended up causing more damage, which cost us a new car. And then he crashed that new car into the garage door just a week later. Nathan wanted to do TikToks and streaming as a hobby, and I supported him at first. But I quickly noticed a pattern. When it comes to anything involving our daughter or me, he's super careless. With his own stuff, he's meticulous. He'd build entire sets for his streaming and leave the garage a mess. His brain's still in there, I guess. A few nights ago, things hit a breaking point. He streamed for 9 hours straight, building a new set, while I juggled work, picking up our daughter, cooking, feeding, and putting her to bed. I asked him to take the trash out, which he did, but he left the front door partially open and went back to his streaming. Our daughter could have easily wandered out, but luckily she was asleep. I found a stovetop burner left on with an empty pot, which melted our daughter's favorite plate when he moved it to the sink. I lost it then. I screamed at him, and he just didn't get why I was so upset. He kept saying it was just an accident, but I'd had enough. I told him he felt more like a liability than a partner. The next morning, I told him my mom would take our daughter for a week so we could sort things out. He just said okay, and has been avoiding me ever since, spending all his time in the garage. He orders DoorDash out there and ignores my messages. When I try to talk to him, he just apologizes to his friends or viewers for the interruption and goes back to his game. That's where we're at. It feels like he's checked out, and I don't know how to fix this. Wow, where do I even begin? So, I've been worried about my husband and have asked him a few times if something was up. Every time he messed up, I tried to be gentle so our daughter wouldn't think mistakes and anger were connected. I also suggested he see a doctor to rule out any medical issues, but he kept saying I was overreacting and that everyone makes mistakes, even though the same ones kept happening. It was frustrating, especially when I pointed out how costly his mistakes were getting, and he'd just brush it off, saying we could afford it. I love him so much, but I miss the dependable guy he was before we had our kid. I'm racking my brain, wondering if I was too harsh or if I've missed something. About our finances, just to clear things up since some folks were curious. We have a shared account for household expenses, but He's been using his own money as far as I know. When he became a stay-at-home husband, I didn't want him to feel financially trapped or like he had to ask for money to buy things for himself or gifts. So, my paycheck gets split between the household account, personal accounts, and savings. I've recently adjusted things by stopping his deposit and removing his name from the bill-paying account because it didn't seem fair anymore. Unfortunately, I can't cancel his card since it's in his name, but future deposits are halted. Before our daughter was born, my husband was really contributing, cooking meals, doing the daily chores like dishes and cat litter, handling random groceries, and even bringing me breakfast in bed with coffee for my meds. He still does most of these, but dishes sometimes pile up because he's into streaming now, and our toddler complicates things with her demand for multiple bowls. He keeps up with daily tasks like cleaning, laundry, yard work, and trash, plus we have a weekly cleaner to help out. My husband is incredibly creative. He's like a modern MacGyver, seriously. He can make amazing set pieces with just duct tape, pennies, and some foam. He even made the ring he proposed with after learning to use a mini forge and lathe. His smile is infectious, and his puns and jokes always crack me up. He took cooking classes to learn my favorite dishes and made his own recipe book. He sings everything from Aqua to Broadway show tunes and dances to Michael Jackson without missing a beat. When our daughter was born, he arranged for my favorite meal from a local restaurant to be delivered to the hospital as my first meal instead of hospital food, which was just the sweetest thing ever. He also makes sure to bring me little frog-themed things because he knows I love them. On my bad pain days, he brings me meals on a custom tray he made, helps me with my shoes and socks, and even does my hair to make me feel pretty. That's the man I fell in love with, and I miss him sometimes. Sorry I haven't been super responsive lately. Thanks for all your suggestions and messages. It's been a busy week, but I really appreciate your support. To answer some common questions, my husband doesn't work because we agreed his job's toxic environment wasn't worth it, especially with how poorly women were treated there. He has no interest in starting his own business, so we decided it was best if he stayed home. Okay. So here's the deal. Yes, there are plenty of women out there selling inferior and unnecessary services at a premium. My husband learned that the hard way. If he ever spoke up about it, his hours would get cut until he had no choice but to leave. He even quit one job on the very first day because his boss left a furious voicemail, all because he didn't sell a refrigerant service to a young black couple who didn't even need it. And yep, he's got documentation to back this up. He reported multiple employers to the State Labor Board, but to our knowledge, nothing ever came of it. After bailing from those toxic trades jobs, he tried working in a factory and a warehouse, but both of those gigs heavily penalized him for needing scheduled time off for my medical needs. Unfortunately, workers' protection is pretty much non-existent here until you qualify for unpaid FMLA, which takes a full year. It's definitely a privilege to walk away from a paying job while flipping the bird, and I've done it a few times myself. I'm lucky, though. I'm in a job that's the exact opposite of toxic. I'm thriving, and my company has an amazingly enforced, no-penalty, unlimited paid sick leave policy. Any manager that penalizes someone for taking leave, they get the boot. It's like finding a unicorn. Now, toss a kid into the mix, and unless we find another magic unicorn employer who won't penalize my husband for needing time off for me or our daughter, like when daycare shut down for a week due to an RSV outbreak, it's pretty much impossible for him to work. Either I have to stop working, or our kid has to be old enough to not need constant watching. Another reason for this dynamic is that even though I'm disabled, my job pays almost double what he's ever made, and they don't cut my pay for taking time off. Financially, it just doesn't make sense for us to swap who the working partner is. And no, my husband doesn't have a big following or make money from streaming on TikTok. His live streams average like 6 viewers, and he has 3 followers on Twitch. When we did our taxes, he didn't even get a 1099 form. He made a whopping $6 from TikTok live gifts and zilch from Twitch. His viewer counts are about the same as they were at the end of last year. So why do we still have a weekly housekeeper and put our daughter in summer camp and part-time daycare? Because I can't stand the idea of one spouse working a full-time job while the other juggles all the domestic duties, child-rearing, enrichment, socialization, and essentially being on call 24/7. I wouldn't want that for myself, and I definitely don't want that for someone I love. If my husband did all the active ties and field trips that daycare does, his evenings and weekends would be swallowed up by domestic chores that I would physically struggle to help with. Our weekly housekeeper helps prevent small messes from turning into overwhelming cleaning marathons, and the monthly deep clean and organization has been a lifesaver as we went from having a baby to a toddler. Just to add, our daughter started part-time daycare when she turned 3. Before that, my partner was her primary caretaker, which made the weekly housekeeping even more crucial in keeping things from falling into chaos. About the allowance thing, yes, I wanted my husband to have his own money, even if he wasn't working a paying job. Maybe I've been on social media too long, but I've read so many stories of non-working spouses, mostly women, being financially abused or trapped in marriages because they didn't have access to money to save up privately. Should I have stopped the allowance when our dynamic became unbalanced? Yeah, probably. I own that. As for what happens if we get a divorce, the house and settlement balance are in a trust, completely separate, and as far as my lawyer can tell, out of his reach. Alimony would be up to a judge, but given that his licenses aren't expired and my ongoing medical costs, there's a good chance I wouldn't be obligated. So hopefully, that answers most of the background questions. Here's the latest update. Friday, I finished work to the amazing smell of dinner being cooked. My husband had the table all set and said he wanted to talk over dinner. Yep, he had read the comments on Reddit, and no, I'm not deleting or changing how I write about him just because he can see it now. I'm not really sure how to describe his reaction, but he spent the last day reflecting on how bad things must be for so many people to suggest various medical diagnoses as reasons and justifications. He told Demi he doesn't think he's got ADHD. His mom was addicted to opioids when he was a kid and tried to get multiple doctors to diagnose him with ADHD. She had him convinced he had it, so he sought out 2 opinions as an adult. He didn't learn about her addiction until his mid-20s. Once he knew, he did seek therapy. He's willing to see a psychiatrist one more time, but he doesn't believe he's ADHD or autistic. However, he does think he might be depressed and is open to exploring other medical suggestions to ease my concerns or rule out major problems. He did say something that's been bothering me, though. He jokingly said that everyone suggesting there's something wrong in his brain must be onto something since he chose to love and marry someone as medically fragile as me, knowing our life together would be anything but normal. He apologized as soon as he saw the hurt in my eyes. He also admitted that the night he left the door open ruined our child's favorite dish and left a pot on the stove. He had drunk a little too much during his stream and promised to monitor that more closely. For the last few nights, he'd been filling his wine bottle with grape juice, so it looked like he was drinking but wasn't. He promised to keep doing that. After dinner, he surprised me with a trip to see the new Deadpool movie. We didn't go to our usual theater because he had looked up which theater had the limited edition popcorn buckets I wanted. I now have a baby Deadpool one that holds popcorn and a drink. The next day, we spent time going over how our family dynamic had changed for the worse, how the little things had added up, and how I view change as a part of an apology. If you keep apologizing but don't change your behavior, your words become meaningless. So me and my husband had a pretty serious talk on Sunday. He finally realized just how often he's been making the same mistakes. We discussed both the short-term and long-term changes that need to happen immediately. He's now in charge of scheduling his own doctor's appointments, and we set some clear timelines for our expectations. We agreed that if he breaks or damages anything, the cost will come out of his allowance, not our shared expense account. I turned his deposit account back on, but with a limit of $50 per paycheck, which he suggested we keep until he's paid back the costs for fixing the garage and car from earlier this year. He admitted that it's going to take a lot longer to cover the cost of ruining the engine in my previous car, but promised to step up and find ways to make things right. I'm not blind to the red flags like love bombing, repeated mistakes despite countless talks, and thinking that verbal apologies are enough. He doesn't seem to get that doing the same thing over and over again is just as bad as not apologizing at all. He's going to read this, and honestly, do I believe that we'll come out of this as a perfect couple who stays together until one of us kicks the bucket? Not really. No offense to him, but for now, it's a potential resolution. He knows he has a lot to make up for, and he's on a tight timetable to do it. The lesson for our daughter will either be that taking real accountability can fix things, or that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't get you the result you want. Or maybe just that love alone isn't enough. Oh, and he finally read the post, so please, catch the hints in my last 4 paragraphs if it's not clear. As for the comments, yep, I'm ready to rumble. There's some truth to the joke about his ability to work being affected due to my medical needs. Neither of us seems super keen on being a partner lately. Given his stance on alimony and money, I hope he looks out for his own financial interests. Am I trying to be a good partner? Absolutely. I pay for part-time housekeeping, full-time summer camp for daycare, and make sure he has his own spending money. My medical needs do impact his ability to work, which could hurt his chances for alimony since he wouldn't need a unicorn job with unpenalized PTO if we split up. Would I still help him land on his feet? Probably. A judge might not make me, though. I wish I could grow a spine, but mine's held together with duct tape, screws, rust, and vibes. I know he's likely to panic in the next month, so I expect a refreshing but temporary change. Sorry to the folks who dogpiled on you before, but you're wrong if you think I'm just going to keep living like this. Interestingly, my 2 posts have more followers after a week than he does with all his streaming stuff. I find it hard to believe that a toxic work environment is why he can't keep a job, but that's just me. I know things were pretty great when he was a house husband, and it sucks that he messed it up. I'll be financially ready to retire in a few years, assuming my career field doesn't suddenly tank in salaries.